Today's video is going to be all about tips for sewing your scrunchies better, opening a package from a Thrifty Notion, and doing a little cleaning so that we can accomplish all of that without this huge mess in our way. It's going to be a lot, but let's get started. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we're doing a lot. We're doing a little cleaning, we're going to be sewing some scrunchies, and then I will be opening a package from a Thrifty Notion with you. So as you can see, cleaning went very well, and with that I was able to find that I even had some elastic already pre-cut so that I could make these two scrunchies. And I actually found the floral scrunchie while I was cleaning, so that's why we're going to sew that one up as well. But let's get into some scrunchie tips, especially if you were sewing a large amount of scrunchies, if you were trying to sell them. What is the fastest and best way to sew up a bunch of scrunchies at once, or if you just want some tips so that you can start to sew scrunchies faster. So first, I do have a pattern available on Etsy that has a whole list of instructions on how to sew up your scrunchies. In case you're interested, that will be in the description box, as well as a YouTube video on how to make a scrunchie going step by step. But if you were here trying to figure out how to do it faster, one thing I would say is I normally skip the pins when I first start off doing this. So as you can see, I have my scrunchie tube here, and if you cut it out correctly, it will all be lining up since it is just a rectangle. So that kind of saves me some time, so I'm not having to go through and pin everything. Next, when it comes time to turning your scrunchie tube right side out, I've really gotten into the safety pin method. And what I mean by that is I attach my safety pin to one edge of my scrunchie, and then I push that all the way through my scrunchie tube, and this helps turn it right side out. Now, on my pattern description and other YouTube videos, there's so many different ways you can do this. You could use a turning tool, such as a pencil or a pen, or an actual turning tool itself. You could also, just very carefully and slowly push all this fabric through just using your fingers. But you probably already have the safety pin on hand to help you with adding your elastic, so why not just use it for turning the scrunchie as well? I find it so much faster, and it's such like this tiny little tool that makes it so much easier. All you need is a safety pin, and you're able to turn this right side out in no time. So this was actually not sped up, that footage, so that was me actually doing it with you, and you can see it is pretty quick to do. So if you're doing 10, 20, 30 of these scrunchies, it's going to make it a lot faster instead of trying to find a pencil, a pen, a turning tool, and go through the whole process. Now, when it comes to bringing these two ends of your scrunchie together, I know earlier I said that I tend to skip the pins on that first step. For this step though, especially when you are sewing on that curve, I definitely still use the pins. I'll also say that depending on what type of fabric you're using, so if you are using a silky material or something that is a little bit more slippery to work with, I would also highly recommend using pins or quilting clips still, as while you want to go faster, you still want to make sure you have a nice product. So if you have the pins on hand and you feel much more comfortable with them, definitely do not feel the need to skip it just to be faster. You want to make sure that in the end that you are putting out a really nice scrunchie. And then with all my seams for my scrunchies, just a reminder to always backstitch your seams. That way it stays nice and secure, especially because this is going to be something that's coming on and off, stretching and unstretching. So you want to make sure it's nice and tight and that everything stays in place. So now it's time to add that elastic. And again, my biggest tip for this is to use the safety pin. This makes it so much easier to guide your elastic through your scrunchie tube, as you're able to feel, like where the start of that elastic is, versus just having to guess and losing it along the way, then having to start the whole process over. My next tip for this though is especially the other end of your elastic that does not have a safety pin on it. I actually pin this to the scrunchie itself. And the reason I do this is that it holds it in place, and then also when I get to the end of moving the elastic all the way through the scrunchie, I already have a pin to use to pin up both ends of my elastic together. This makes it a lot faster and a lot easier, and I'm not having to search for a pin when I'm trying to, hold 3 different things in place. Now, as you saw when I'm actually sewing my elastic with the sewing machine, I left about 3/4 of an inch to an inch on one side of that elastic. And the reason I do this is that way it makes it easier to move my elastic through the sewing machine with the teeth. It doesn't get eaten by the sewing machine, and it helps move and glide everything much easier through. Now, I know that some people really struggle with this step, and this can be due to the sewing machine, this can be due to the setup, and there's a lot of ways that you can kind of get around this. So first, if you have a sewing machine where it just keeps eating your elastic, one idea is to put a piece of tissue paper underneath, and then that will allow the machine to glide over the elastic much easier, and when you're done with the sewing, you can just rip the tissue paper off, and you'll still have those stitches. Another way to do this though is just go very, very slowly, both in front and in back of the elastic. And then as you can see, when you have all of those stitches done, you can then just cut the elastic off, and you'll have that really nice and neat seam that you're able to use, put that back into your scrunchie, and it's now just ready to be closed up and finished. Now, when it comes time to closing up your scrunchies, this is probably where I do things in a longer way than necessary, but I think that hand sewing allows a really nice and neat touch to finishing off your scrunchies. And the reason that I say this is that hand sewing gives you a lot more control over the type of stitch you're using, the length of the stitch, and also making sure that if you're trying to match up a pattern, it allows you to do that. Now, I have seen people machine sew their scrunchy clothes. They look super nice, everything looks really neat, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. And if you're making a ton of scrunchies at once, it may be a better option so that you can make them in that bulk format. But I think that this can really give your scrunchies a nice way to stand out, and it gives you something that not everyone's doing. The reason why I've always done this with my scrunchies is it just kind of gives it so that you're not able to see any of those seams. Everything looks nice and hidden. It gives it a much cleaner look, and especially if you're using the exact same color thread, you no longer have to worry about, like what if a seam sort of shows. And I think that it can help make your scrunchies stand out, especially if you're trying to sell them on something such as Etsy, or if you're going to a craft store. It gives you that option to really have a really nice selling product. Now, when it comes to the end of the scrunchie, I just knot the thread a few times, and then I sew one more time through wherever I was using that thread, and then I just cut it. That way the ends of the thread stay within the scrunchie and you're not able to see it. So next, I worked on the second scrunchie that I had. So this scrunchie, I just did a time lapse to show you the whole process of making it from start to finish. As you can tell, this is probably one of the fastest scrunchies I did, more because I knew what I was doing, and with the time lapse, everything looks so much faster. But I really liked how the fabric was looking. I didn't have any issues with the elastic, and so it was nice that it all worked out. Also, for this one, as you can tell, I did hand sew as well, as I think it does just give it a really nice and clean touch, and everything comes together. So the last part of this video is opening my package from a Thrifty Notion. I've ordered, I think, 3 or 4 times now from them. I absolutely love their stuff, as it gives you a really good feeling that you're not buying necessarily brand new fabric. This is all fabric that comes secondhand, so it's people who had a large fabric collection, they're not going to use it, so instead of it going to the dump, it goes to a Thrifty Notion and then they sell it again. So you are really helping with the sustainable fabric movement. Everything I bought here is to make a pair of pants with, so I got the zipper. I also love how the zippers look because they look a little older, so it has a different look than if you bought a zipper today. Also, they put this cute little cat on the invoice. I thought that was a fun touch. Then they also will tell you when you buy it, like if there are any imperfections, if there's any discoloration. So for example, this interfacing, they told me on the website it had some discolorations due to age. I don't notice anything though. I've really looked through it multiple times and I didn't see any discoloration. I think it looks really nice and I got it for a really good price. And then this is the fabric that I'm going to be using to make my pants. It's actually a navy blue. The lighting makes it look a little bit lighter here than it is, but I love how it's a nice thick stretch fabric, and I think it's going to work really well. So while this video had multiple different things, I hope you learned something from it. I hope that it helped you in your scrunchie journey, or if you're looking at buying from a Thrifty Notion. And if you did like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.